Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining my session on flow engineering. What I'm going to be presenting with this session is a new method to bring all the different perspectives and incentives across your value stream together so that everyone can be rowing in the same direction and you can get better performance, better outcomes, and feel better about all the collaboration that's necessary to deliver value in 2021 and beyond. So first, as an introduction, I've been in tech for about 21 years now. I've been through a bunch of different roles, and the common thread across my career is really this focus on flow and value delivery. And I have really leaned into that with Visible, and I'm going to show you the outcome of all of that effort and how you can get better results using all of the experience that I've tied into flow engineering. So we're going to structure this talk as a story. So it's a story about new ideas and different approaches. We're going to be looking at improving clarity, value, and flow across the organization, across value streams. We're going to be looking at taking what's inside different individual minds and creating a collective understanding that allows us to move forward together. And we're going to be looking at bridging gaps across the organization, up, down, between all the different stakeholders who need to be working together to get better results. And as a result, we're going to be creating win-win-win scenarios. So everybody comes out ahead, nobody has to compromise, and we get everybody happy with the sustained value delivery that we're able to produce. So to frame the story, what we're going to be looking at is I'm going to be playing a development manager who's tasked with a bunch of improvement efforts that are being performed by the organization. So my company has to go faster, do more, perform at a higher level, compete in a more disruptive landscape. And so I've got a huge backlog of changes, but I've also got to constantly move faster. So the question is, how do we do that? How do we move forward at a higher velocity, but also get better results and do it without burning out? So it turns out that a lot of these things that we try to do when we're trying to go faster or adopt new technology or new ways of working is that we fail because we lack clarity. There's this challenge of seeing and understanding what's happening, where we should focus, and really what's going to make a difference in our work in getting better results. And clarity really is the thing that underpins all of our efforts to improving flow, because we need to get everybody involved on the same page in order to improve flow. We can't just do it in a silo. We can't just do it in a single role. So we need to take all these separate perspectives and bring them into alignment, bring them a common sense of understanding and clarity. And we don't have a lot of great tools for this. So you could see on this side of the slide a number of different visualizations. This is what I'm going to be presenting in the presentation today. And the reason why this is really important is because we cannot copy and paste from all the companies that we admire, all the success stories that we hear about, all the frameworks and models that are highly prescriptive, don't get great results. We have to generate our own solutions. We have to create our own better ways of working. And so the mapping techniques that I'm going to share with you are the best way that I've found to do that. So mapping, what is mapping all about, really? It's the act of coming together to create a common understanding, a common visualization of different information. So we can use mapping to create and illustrate a value stream. We can lay out an ecosystem. We can look at a value chain structure. We can illustrate our organization as an org chart or different groups. There's any number of ways that we can visualize what's in our heads. And when we do that together, it's highly engaging. It can reignite a sense of camaraderie across the team, bring people together and energize us so that we can get out of a rut with a new sense of clarity and direction. And when we are sharing this context and creating a map together, we're sharing ownership over not only the information that we create and generate and clarify, but in the next steps where we're all more invested because we've all worked together to create something that is setting us off in the right direction. So that alignment is very powerful. It means that we can go away and do work on our own and come together and not be on totally different pages. We can converge and make sure that we're getting a positive outcome, all the while being more autonomous at the same time. And as I mentioned, there's no copy and paste way to do this, but mapping with templates and structures and models that I'm going to be presenting to you means that you can customize a future state. You can customize a picture of your organization that's very clear, very actionable, and very relevant to your context. Other benefits, we retain all this learning because we're doing this interactively. We're working together to create all of this. And as a bonus, it's all remote friendly. So all of this has been created under the context of COVID and working in distributed teams. So it's all very remote friendly. It's very easy to get started. It's very easy to save all of these artifacts, integrate them into your digital workflows. And so you really don't have to adjust much about the way that you work in order to utilize all these techniques. So what I call this is flow engineering, because what we're really doing is solving problems affecting the flow of value through your organization, the flow of value to your customers. And there is a flow to flow engineering. So what we do when we start out is we begin with the end in mind. We begin with as much clarity as we can create by really understanding a target outcome. And then we look at the value stream to understand, what are we doing right now? What is the flow of work in the organization currently, in our team currently, or across multiple teams if we're in more of a siloed environment? And then we'll look at dependencies to find out what is affecting the flow of work from the outside. And we look at capabilities as ways of addressing those dependencies. If we were to improve the capabilities inside the value stream, what would it take? What would it take to break the dependencies that we see in the value stream? So all of this, you can see flows from a target outcome to exactly how we're going to get to that outcome. So let's start with the outcomes. When we map outcomes, what we do is we define a target. So in this case, my team has to go twice as fast, but we also have to make sure that we maintain quality and we don't forget about keeping everything running smoothly. Then what we want to look at is, why are we doing any of this? And that can help anchor it in everyone's minds, bring the team into an understanding of why this is so valuable so that they get more invested and they feel like their why is represented in this outcome map as well. And then we look at obstacles. What are the things that are going to trip us up as we head in the direction of the outcome? And we look at investigations as a way to learn more about, how do we avoid the obstacles? How do we mitigate the obstacles? How do we best approach getting to the outcome? And finally, we look at measures. How are we going to know that we're making progress in the right direction? So all of this creates this very clear, easily understood, customized breakdown of our target outcome. And so we're beginning our process of heading towards twice as fast with a high degree of clarity and alignment, right? We're all on the same page. We know what this looks like. We know what we're going to do when we break off, and we can work autonomously and then come together and arrive at the same destination, right? We're going to get to the same place of twice as fast by starting off with a lot of clarity. That brings us to the value stream. If we want to go twice as fast, we have to know what we're doing right now. We have to know how we're performing. So we're going to create a value stream map to give us visibility into the way that we're working right now, but also measurement that's going to help us understand where we can improve and where we should be focusing our efforts. So you'll see this sequential progress of activities here, the value stream. You see step timing above. So this is how long it's taking to perform each of these activities. You might start to notice some things stand out in terms of measurement. We also have delay, so we can represent both how long it takes to do each activity. And we can also measure how long are we waiting between each of these activities, between the handoffs, between the task switching, because often this is where we see a lot of waste. So by doing this, we're able to identify a single focal point that's more valuable than anything else in the value stream. So this is pointing us towards environment setup. We see a lot of time spent, a lot of delay. It takes a long time. And then we've got a delay as it comes back to the team. And this is taking up 45% of the total time. So if we were to address this hotspot, we're well on our way to twice as fast. So this is giving us a good candidate to focus on. And it's backed by data, which means if we need to bring it to other parts of the organization, we can point to it and say, can we agree that this is more important than all the other things that we could be focused on? So here's an example of a more detailed value stream map. That was a simplified example prior, but we can really layer on a lot of detail on top of that basic structure to represent anything from tools, artifacts, roles, rework, quality, value added time. There's a number of different things that we can layer on here. So from that basic structure, we can dig a lot deeper and add detail where it's valuable. So flow engineering in general, very simple practice if you're really just covering the basics, but you can dig deep, you can dive deep, you can add detail where it's going to make a difference. So this brings us to dependencies, because it turns out that environment setup is not handled by the team, which is why it takes so long. So whenever we have to deliver code, we have to make sure that the environment is nice and clean, that we haven't made any changes that aren't captured as code. There's a number of different hoops we have to jump through, but what we have to do is go outside of the team to get this done. And we could look at all the different dependencies that are affecting the value stream, right? There's a number of different dependencies in every single value stream, but the only one that's really going to make a difference is the one that's linked to our hotspot, right? So we can ignore all the other pieces of the value stream in terms of dependencies, all the other dependencies that could be slowing us down, and focus on the one that's really making the biggest difference. And that brings us to Ludo. So Ludo is the director of infrastructure. As you can see, he doesn't look very comfortable at the moment. The reason he doesn't look very comfortable is that he's not. He is responsible for all of the environments in the organization, the dev infrastructure, the production infrastructure. This is a high stress job. And he's always swamped. He's always got way too much work to do. He's got constant interruptions to deal with. He's always being tapped on the shoulder by everybody in the organization who needs something from him, because he's a giant bottleneck, single group inside the company that's responsible for infrastructure. And he's got a number of initiatives that he should be working on. He's got migrations. He's got adopting serverless infrastructure. There's all kinds of things that he's trying to do. And so what he actually has to do is say no to everything, right? He can't help everyone with everything. He can't tackle every bottleneck in the organization. So what's happening here? We're trying to go faster as a business. My team is trying to help enable that by going twice as fast. And we get to infrastructure and we're blocked, right? There's nothing that Ludo can do. He's overworked. He really can't help us out with environment setup at the moment. So it would seem that we're stuck. And he really doesn't have any option to address the situation because his entire workflow is just a series of interruptions and broken processes, right? We really can't help Ludo with his problems at the moment. He has massive flow issues. We're going to have to come back to that later. But does that mean that we're stuck, right? So what can we do about environment setup? So we can dig a little bit deeper. We can go a little bit deeper into this value stream to break apart environment setup and look at what's actually happening in this process. So when we do that with Ludo's team, we can make a couple of changes in the way that we're managing environments that are very quick fixes. So my team, I have some smart engineers, some backend engineers who understand how to do some infrastructure improvements. We can address some of these constraints inside of environment setup by pairing with Ludo's team. With a very minimal time investment, we're able to make a considerable impact into this environment setup that not only simplifies that process, but removes a bunch of interruptions that Ludo's team would have to deal with because these things are always breaking and they're really not that well engineered. So by pairing with Ludo's team and tackling this specific bottleneck, we're able to reduce the total time in the value stream by 35%. That's a huge improvement with some very minimal low-hanging fruit opportunities that Ludo just wasn't getting to because he's so overwhelmed, right? And we haven't taken the time to step away from our work and really look at what's happening. And so value stream mapping, the flow engineering practices are enabling us to do that with a very minimal time commitment. All of these workshops, outcome mapping, value stream mapping, dependency mapping, we're targeting 2 hours for each of these workshops. So very minimal time commitment in order to make these huge gains in terms of performance. So by pairing with Ludo's team, targeting exactly what's going to make a difference in the value stream, we're 3/4 of the way to our target outcome. And this brings us to mapping capabilities. If we want to move from depending on Ludo's team and having infrastructure as a constraint, a bottleneck on our software development, if we're moving away from that, we have to make sure that we have the capabilities to do that, to take on that work. That either means that we need training, we need to figure out some tool that's going to do it for us, or we could take a more modern approach, a more realistic approach, which we'll dig into in a moment. So what we want to look at when we're mapping capabilities to better understand what would it take to break these dependencies, we're able to identify key capabilities that are tied directly to our bottleneck, which means that we don't look at every possible capability that the team could have and measuring that. We want this to be lean. We want this to be easy. And we want to be able to do this quickly. So we take all the possible capabilities and we shrink them down to things that will directly address our key constraint in the bottleneck or in the value stream. So we're looking at environment setup capabilities. So we're able to take these smaller number of capabilities to focus on. We can identify who owns these things right now. Who are we going to have to work with to improve these capabilities? And so we have an owner, but it turns out that these owners don't have backups. So that means that if they're probably overworked, they probably can't go on vacation. They might be a little stressed. They might be stretched a little thin. And so we're able to see that we're not necessarily in a great position to be supporting these capabilities. And so we might want to tackle that first. We might want to look at who can support these owners as we try to improve these capabilities. Then what we're able to do is measure our skill level as a team not as individuals, but we want to see what is our team's capability level, skill level with this capability. And so we're able to highlight where we might see issues there. We're able to target what do we have to support this capability? Do we have sufficient documentation? Do we have APIs that we can leverage? Is there good tooling that we can start using? Is there something available in the organization that we're just not using that could give us a level of support? Then we look at training. If we needed to bring on a backup, let's say we don't have anyone who can actually support right now, how long would it take us to train somebody? So cost incorporates not only monetary cost, but the time that it would take to do that training. And this all factors into a level of comfort, right? The team gets to weigh in and say, we're really not capable of supporting this specific aspect of the value stream. We're not at a stage where we could take on environments set up ourselves, whether or not we're allowed to do it. If we can't demonstrate that we're capable of doing it, nothing's going to happen. And it wouldn't be a great idea to bring that into the team. But all of this we can consider and then give us a very good idea about what we need to do in terms of capability if we were going to break the dependency, if we were going to address this. And this takes us from every capability down to a single focal point because we're able to rank all this data. This qualitative and quantitative data that we're collecting through flow engineering is giving us focus, right? We're going from everything we could possibly chase to a single focal point, a few specific points that we focus on. And that means that we take all the efforts and capabilities across the value stream and we get to laser focus them on something that's really going to make a difference. So what needs to happen in order to move us forward, right? Ludo's team stuck. We don't have a high level of capability, but we're able to represent this using team topologies as a potential current to future state scenario. What we want to do is take Ludo's team from a complicated subsystem team where they have to be doing all the work and they're constantly interrupted and fighting fires to a scenario where Ludo's team is providing a platform that my team and all the other development teams in the organization can consume and use as a platform, as a self-service capability. So we're able to really target what is going to move us in this direction of creating this self-service platform. This becomes our new target. And we're able to justify an investment in that direction by looking at what it's worth to improve the flow of value through the value stream, what it would be worth to have this self-service platform versus training every development team to do that work. This is an option that is highly automated and highly scalable, easy to support, decouples Ludo's team from all the development teams, and provides a product that all the development teams can leverage, and where whenever we make improvements, everybody benefits. So this is where we're sort of heading with our solution. And we've been pointed in this direction by doing all this mapping, which has created maps that we can share with the rest of the organization. So we've arrived at a state of clarity around outcome. We are now understanding where our constraint is in the value stream, and we're able to look at dependencies and how we would address those dependencies by progressing through this flow. So what happens is we've clarified goals, we've looked at identifying constraints and then addressing constraints. And we can bring any of these maps to leadership in the organization who can help us with budget, with time, with any type of resources, bringing in consultants or support, helping us find ways of pairing with different parts of the organization in order to address this. We have clarity and we have easily shareable artifacts that everybody can easily understand. So what starts to happen? We are moving infrastructure in the right direction, improving its capacity. We are moving my team in the right direction. I'm now able to move faster because we're able to address the bottleneck, and the business moves faster as a result. So just to recap the entire flow of flow engineering, what we're covering here is we go from a target outcome, whether we've created the outcome or not. If the outcome was just handed to us and we need to get there, we can break it down to better understand that outcome. Then we can look at the value stream that's supporting that outcome. What are we doing right now, and where are the constraints in the value stream? Then we can look at what are the dependencies affecting the constraints and affecting the value stream. And we look at capabilities. What would it take for us to address those constraints? And finally, we're able to take all that data, all of the information that we're able to surface and highlight through the mapping exercises and plot them onto what I call flow roadmap, which is the how for your technical roadmap and your product roadmap. It's a roadmap that's dedicated towards how are we going to deliver any of this work? How are we going to go faster? How are we going to make sure that our value delivery is sustainable and scalable and moving in the right direction? And so the flow roadmap gives us the ability to set targets, create measurements to track the progress towards those targets, and then also define methods. So things that we're going to be doing in order to deliver those outcomes. So this gives us everything from a single target all the way to a prioritized backlog of next steps, measurement of progress, and clarity the entire way through this process so that everyone is on the same page. Everybody has a high degree of confidence and clarity on what we're doing and how we're going to do it. And it's easy to share across the organization as well. We have maps we can go take into conversations, point to very clear highlights, and have very powerful discussions about how are we going to actually get any of this stuff done? How are we going to get us to another level, a next level of performance? And this is something that you can replicate across the entire organization. This works for onboarding new hires. It works for a sales process. It works for incident response. There's nothing in your organization that isn't a value stream, that isn't a process that can be improved. There's nothing in your organization that doesn't have a customer behind it, whether it's an internal customer or an external customer. And so all these mapping techniques work the same way. Although they're completely customized for every single value stream, you're able to apply the same practices to any flow issue and anything that's holding you back from your goals. So this is interesting to you. If you've found value in this talk, I would encourage you to go to flow.visible.is. There's an ebook there that's totally free that will take you through the process in much more detail from start to finish. You can use it as a reference. You can share it with other members of your team and start talking about ways to improve performance. And so I would encourage you to check that out and get in touch with me and let me know, what resonated with you. What do you think would be useful here? Or what's holding you back from doing this now? I want to know that. I would love to help you with it. Another thing I want to highlight is I've got a book coming out with my co-author, Andrew Davis, next year, this time, published by IT Revolution Press. So this is the folks behind the DevOps Handbook, the Unicorn Project, all your favorite DevOps books. We're going to be joining that catalog with a book on flow engineering. And you can follow our progress. We've got a bi-weekly newsletter at inside-out.work. And we would love to see you join us on the journey as we go. We're going to be sharing all kinds of insights and learning as we create and start to share all the information packed into that book. So with that, I want to say thank you very much for having me, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.